Hey, let's talk a little bit today about the scale parameter on stereo delays with Helix, and a lot of this will also apply to Pod Go, but we're going to be doing it on the Helix right now. Let's dive in. So here we are in HXEdit. Got that running. I set up just a little bit of routing stuff so it'll be easy to show you some of these delay settings. What we've got going here is two snapshots. You see a snapshot named Path 1. Switch over another snapshot named Path 2. And you can also see it, this light will change. So Path 1, when I click it, you see it switches over to Path 2. So there's a visual indicator there so you can see you'll only hear the signal on whichever path is lit up. So Path 1, this will be lit up. Path 2, this will be lit up. So that's how you can tell what you're hearing right now. So let's start out on Path 1. And this is, of course, just dry. There's no amp or anything. You can hear that kind of thing happening with the sound. Pretty uninspiring, right? But let's take a look at some delays here. So let's just throw on here the Adriatic delay. I have my little mod here that switches these things to the right names. Be on the lookout for me publishing that. I'm going to set it to a quarter note delay. We'll just clean up the delays a little bit just for the purpose of this video, but normally I like the grit that comes from this. This is one of my favorite delay models here. Okay, so we're at a quarter note delay. I'm just set to 60 beats per minute up here, so you can hear that sounds like. So we just get one repeat per second. I think everybody pretty much expected that to happen, right? Okay, so not too amazing there so far. So let's pull this down, make another path out of it. Now let's copy it. So we have two copies of it. What we'll hear now is essentially the same thing, but it'll be a little bit louder because there's two of them. So it's still just doing delays. Now I have these two delays in parallel, but since they're doing the same thing, it doesn't really do anything other than when I had them on one path. So let's get these panned so you can really hear what's going on. I'm going to make sure we get only left signal along the top line and only right signal along the bottom line. And I'm going to do the same thing on the merge block. Okay, now when I hit it, it's not so much louder now because they're not built on top of each other. This top delay is only on the left speaker. The bottom delay is only on the right speaker, but it's still both a quarter note. So it sounds like the exact same thing. Just to prove it to you, let's duplicate this delay down to the bottom line. Switch over to Path 2. Back to Path 1. So they sound exactly the same so far. Now is where we're going to start to get a little bit interesting. So let's leave the delay in the left speaker set to a quarter note. Let's change the delay in the right speaker to a dotted eighth. All right, let's hear that now. You should hear it go da 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 da, that kind of thing. So it goes back and forth, that little bit of ping pong. Okay, so that's a dotted eighth over there and a quarter note over there. Now, on Path 2, I'm going to show you how to do that exact same thing, but with one delay block and no splits and merges. So this is pretty cool. All right, so that's Path 1. We got it going back and forth between our speakers here. So let's dig in here and switch this over to a stereo delay. It's on a quarter note sync. I'll leave our feedback. Again, I'll clean it up the same way I cleaned up above. So we'll switch over to Path 2. Now we still have just the quarter. So that's normal. Now, what we're going to play with here is this scale parameter. So up above, remember I have a quarter on the left and a dotted eighth on the right. A dotted eighth is, here's your math test for the day, what percentage of a quarter is a dotted eighth? those 4/16 notes in a quarter note. That means each 16th note is 25% of a quarter note. A dotted eighth is 3/16 notes. So a dotted eighth is 75% as long as a quarter note. So we'll set this scale to 75%. Hear what that sounds like now. There we go. Now the same thing, we switch back to path 1. Path 2. So I was able to recreate my dotted eighth and quarter note delay using a single block, one delay block, no splits, no merges, no panning necessary. Just use a single delay block. Now, that's pretty cool, and playing in stereo is great. Playing in stereo is fun, but you may not have the option of playing in stereo, or you may not even be going for a stereo effect. Maybe you just want that pattern of a delay, but still in mono. So there's two ways you can handle that with Helix as well. Actually, there's probably a lot more than two, but I'm going to tell you about two. So those two ways, one is you just unplug one of the outputs from your Helix. Just go down to the floor, pop out the right output. You'll only hear it all in mono. The other way is you can put a mono block after the delays, any mono block. I am, for the sake of this video, just going to throw a mono gain block after it, and I'll duplicate that on both paths so you can see that it makes no difference. So right now I'm on path 2, you can see here, and that sounds like. Switch back to path 1. Path 2. So it's all good there, right? So that's how we can mimic two delay blocks in parallel with a single delay block. Now you don't have to stick with 75%. If you wanted an eighth and a quarter, what's an eighth to a quarter? Well, it's 50%. It's half as long, right? So you could set this scale to 50%. If you want a golden ratio delay, you could set it to 62%. That's close enough for rock and roll anyway. Anyway, I hope you can have fun. If you wanted a 16th note and a quarter, you could set this at 25%, or you could just sort of stick it wherever you want and just play it and have it go crazy and be fun. Let's take these mono delay blocks. Some other things you could do off of there. If you are playing in stereo, you could set it to something very close to 100. Like if you set it to 99, hopefully you can hear this if you're listening in stereo. You hear those repeats have just a very small amount of flam to them. And that can be pretty cool if you're playing in stereo. Be careful with that though, because if you collapse that to mono, it kind of sounds like garbage, if I have to say so. Let's just hear what that sounds like. So here is that same thing, but in mono. I hope you can hear. Let me kick up the feedback a little so you can hear it a little bit better what happens to the delays. I'll turn the feedback up even more. Okay, I'm going to turn that down before it kills itself. Basically, the more repeats you have, you can kind of get away with it with maybe 1 or 2 repeats, but the more repeats you have, the stranger and stranger it starts to sound. And you hear, as they spread out, just a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. It gets worse and worse and worse. So generally, you would really only want to set it to things like a 99% or 98% if you were really playing in true stereo through a pair of cabinets or a power cab 212 in stereo or stereo PA or something like that. So try and avoid those real high settings if you have to retain mono compatibility. So there it is, nice and easy, short and quick. I hope you all liked it. Hopefully you find something that you can learn and use here. If you like my videos, like my channels, want to see more of these things, the best way to encourage me is to just head over to my store, buy one of my preset packs or something like that. That always helps me to be able to be encouraged to put out more videos. Leave a positive word down in the comments. I love hearing from y'all. Share my videos with people if you find them useful. There's a lot of tips and tricks here. So I hope you're all staying safe out there. Have a good day, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video.